sorry. Very sorry for that. It has been quite a time of change, growth, all sorts of things, and so I just kind of wanted to come on here to sort of break that down for you guys and give you an update on everything that has happened, that I can, articulate, and then also kind of discussing where the channel is headed, which is really not anything unpredictable compared to what I've done before. I really intend to just keeping on, and doing kind of the same type of content that I was doing before. Hold on, let me adjust a little bit because this is doing too much. Okay, that should be a little more level for you all. But yeah, and so I'm just gonna get right into it and give you guys sort of the rundown of the last 5 years. So, to pick up where I left off on the channel, I was living in western Colorado, in a town that I had never been to before, choosing to live there, and I mean, I had technically driven through it as like a child, but so yeah, I don't know, something was calling me out there, and turns out it was this whole new life that I am now living. But at the time, I didn't exactly know. I just knew I needed to get out of the city and spend some time out in the desert alone, and learned that spending time out in the desert alone is not what's right for me, sustainably and permanently. As much as I love it, it wasn't what was good for me, and I had to learn that lesson, and eventually I moved back to the state of Georgia, but this time with a whole different set of goals and dreams, because kind of where I left off on this channel was me talking about how I was starting to get into geology, and well, now turns out I went on to get my bachelor's in geology in Georgia, and then now I'm about to finish my master's this upcoming semester, so it's all kind of happened so fast, but it all feels so right, and something that's been different in these last few years compared to my early adulthood is this resounding feeling of being in the right place at the right time. Finally. Because that's not something I've really ever felt in my life. And so yeah, so here I am back to really tell you all about it. So I come back to Atlanta back in 2021. And so I guess it's actually really only been about 4 years since I've uploaded, because I think it was shortly before I moved that I made my last video. So I came back. I lived with my parents for a few years to get my finances back in order. I lived with them separately because they're divorced, but I lived with my dad first for like a year, and then my mom for another couple of years. Now I'm back on my own again, and it feels good because I actually earned it this time. So before 2021, I had lived basically alone for years, since I was 20. And so I always was alone, but sometimes I was financially stable and supporting myself, and other times I was really struggling, and the unlivable wage was not cutting it. So when I lived in Colorado, the last, videos that I made on this channel, that was the last time I lived alone, before this period. So then I lived, with my parents separately. And, oh my goodness, that had its own challenges. My family dynamic has completely transformed in these last few years. It's gone through all these different phases of being like worse and more toxic, being better and not so toxic. we're back to being highly, very toxic currently. So I'm loving that. Sorry, I just bumped the mic. So I'm loving that. Yeah, it's a great time. But anyways, that aside, since everything else in my life is going so well right now, it really doesn't faze me anymore. Like my family issues, whatever. If people want to just like misbehave and treat each other like garbage with no respect, then that's fine, because I respect myself and I respect the friends and colleagues that I keep close to me in my life. And so I really do feel a large sense of autonomy over who I choose to keep in my circle now. In my family, I'm at a place with them where I'm still deciding, are they in or are they out? Because as a whole, they're out. I've really decided to give up my family as a whole. I've decided to give up celebrating holidays with any of them, and that's over. But I'm at a point now where I'm determining, okay, who am I going to continue to have individual relationships with, which I view separately from the family as a whole, like I was saying. So, yeah, I'm also using my hands a lot today. I'm trying to kind of, like, I don't really know how to do hand movements yet, so I wouldn't call them hand movements per se, but I am trying to sort of illustrate what I'm talking about with my hands. So you could call it partial hand movements. But anyway, so enough about the family stuff. Going back to 2021, what I did is I decided I wanted to basically do a trial run with joining the geosciences major at my original university that I started at as a freshman in college. And I did just one intro geology class and the one intro geology lab that went with it to start. And so I actually started that the very beginning of 2022, so that was the spring semester. And I really loved it, but I also at the time was still just like, oh my gosh, do I want to commit to doing this, or do I really want to commit to my music career and trying new ways to approach that? But I was really still frozen in this space of not knowing what to do with my music and just not understanding sort of promotional strategy, which now I have a much greater understanding of. But at the time I was like, I guess I just need a label to help with those kinds of things. But then finding a label as a completely new artist with no following is basically not a thing anymore these days. Labels really want to take on artists that already have an established following, because they don't want to do that work of starting you from the ground up. So anyways, but I stuck with it, and I'm so glad that I did. And so, meaning back to the geology, I stuck with the geosciences degree, and I went on to become a full-time student again and take a full load of classes. And so what I did was that summer 22, I took the intro to class, and that was the prerequisite to the large majority of what's left in the major, outside of what has more specific prereqs, like you have to do chemistry to unlock a lot of the upper level classes, like mineralogy and petrology. So then I did my full sequence of chemistry that following year when I was full-time. So starting fall 22, I fell in love with chemistry. I loved every moment of it, every equation, every problem, as hard as they were, as much as I wanted to pull my hair out. I stuck with it, and it was so fun to me to have a really difficult chemistry problem and come back to it several times and finally figure it out. That was like the greatest joy I'd ever experienced in my life. So I loved chemistry, and I knew I wanted chemistry to be a big focus in what I did in geology. So then I also took calculus, and I started doing my upper level geology courses like sedimentology and stratigraphy, hydrogeology, which is the study of groundwater. I went on to take environmental geology that year, and another class called environmental health and safety, which is an OSHA certification class. So I got an OSHA certificate out of that. course called Geology of Georgia, where we just went all around the state and did field trips and looked at outcrops and studied, the whole story of Georgia, how the different provinces came to be, their ages, and how they formed. So now I know so much about, sorry, I just hit my arm. I know so much about Georgia's geology, and it really got me to appreciate Georgia and Appalachia in general in a way that I didn't before, because you may have noticed some comments I made earlier on this channel about, the East Coast, bleh, the West is where it's at. But in learning geology in Georgia, I've really come to appreciate Georgia, and I do think it is very much my favorite state east of the Mississippi. To me, nothing else can beat it. Like I said, east of the Mississippi, but everything west of the Mississippi beats everything out here. But just to specify, I haven't lost that preference and feeling. But I do really love Georgia's geology now, and I do find a lot of joy in the things that we have here. But anyways, to continue, so then going into 2023, I got really involved in the department. I started making, colleagues, not quite friends yet, but like colleague acquaintances, like networking. And let's see what else happened. Oh my gosh, I was also in like this long-term relationship. Forgot to even mention it. It shows how irrelevant it was, but I was in a long-term relationship from early 2022 to the end of 2023, so it was like a year and a half. So that was going on simultaneously to me, navigating this, BS, which is a Bachelor in Science. But anywho, so then the next academic year, going into late 23, I took geochemistry, which tied it all together, the geology and the chemistry, and fell in love with that, and it really confirmed for me that that's the direction I wanted to go in terms of research. And then I also did paleontology, which I love because I love the biography of Earth and just the story through time of how it's changed and how life has come about and how that has influenced the Earth, and how the atmosphere has evolved and how the crust has evolved. It's just all a beautiful story to me. So I loved that. And then I took, I don't know, I'm like getting fuzzy on the rest of my coursework. Oh, and then I had to take the following semester, spring 24, was like the most brutal semester of it all. This was my final semester of the undergrad, so the bachelor's, and the reason why I was able to move through the bachelor's so quickly is because I already had all of my gen eds out of the way from doing dual enrollment in high school, and I got all of my like electives and stuff out of the way when I was a music major as a freshman in college. I also did a semester of linguistics in between, but I don't think any of those classes counted for anything. And then, so then fast forward back to geology. It only took me 5 semesters to get through the rest of a bachelor's. So anyways, back to the spring of 24. It was my final semester in the undergrad. And it was brutal because the classes are known as the hardest in the major, which include petrology, structural geology, and basic field methods, and I had to do all those simultaneously. Typically, most people will do basic field methods like in the summer or separately because it's a class where you actually go out into the field and people will go on field trips into different locations and you make geologic mapping, you study outcrops and you piece them together, and you make maps and cross sections that show what's going on in the subsurface, which you can only understand if you have that good basis of petrology and structural geology knowledge. But structural geology, I will tell you, was definitely the hardest class for me and for so many other people. They would also say that that was the hardest, and that's because it's a lot of geophysics. So for me, I'm not much of a physics background, much more chemistry. I have taken a college physics sequence, but it was the introductory level and not the principles level, which I took for chemistry. And I've also just really struggled with, spatial things in physics. Like, it's the spatial relationships that I struggle with in 3 dimensions. It's just hard for me to picture things sometimes. And so with structural geology, that was a challenge, but I still pulled it off. I got an A+, and that was the most worth it A+ I had ever received. I was like, wow, I was astounded, but very happy to have pulled that off. And then I graduated with my bachelor's, and went right into my master's. So I did my master's in the same institution by doing a BS-MS dual degree. So some of those classes in my last undergrad semester also counted towards my graduate master's degree work, coursework. So that's why the master's has only taken me 3 semesters to complete, even with doing a thesis. So I'm now completing my thesis and will be defending it in either late November or early December. And then I'm going to be done. I'm going to graduate, and I will have 2 degrees that I did not have 4 years ago. And it's wild to me, the power that is in commitment and sticking to something. Because before this, I had never stuck to something to this degree. I had never developed a network like I have now in geology, where I go to conferences and national conferences where I can recognize people I've seen before. And I have this great network, like I said, of people just from home at my own institution. And I have some really wonderful professors who I hold really dear. And so I've had, honestly, an incredible experience with geology, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's so much better than anything I had in music, community-wise, because in music, I just had too many shady people who were clogging up the network, and there was a lot of dark energy in that space. And so it feels very good to have left that behind and to move into this scientific community that I very much feel is merit-based, and people really just want to see good science, and they want to see good scientists thrive. They don't, it's not as nepotic as the entertainment industry. And of course, science has its own issues, and there's its own issues of ethics and whatnot. And who does still play a big role in what job you get. But it's just much less of that nepotism we see in the entertainment industry, where you often do see a lot of people who aren't talented and don't really have any sort of skill or merit, but just have a recognizable face, right? In science, that doesn't exist. You have to have some level of merit or content or substance for people to respect you and therefore give you opportunities. So anyway, I really enjoy my career as a scientist, and I'm very excited to see where it goes next. I plan to be working in industry by January, so I will keep you all updated on how that goes. But in other news, I also have not given up on this, like, ASMR. I very much intend to continue, and I really wanted to continue at a lot of points, but just didn't have the wherewithal, the gusto, whatever it was. I just didn't have it at the time, and now I do. And so here I am, and I promise this time I'm back for good. I very much intend to be a consistent creator for you all now. And yeah, and then also when it comes to music, I am completely sort of rebooting my music career. I'm going to be releasing music under a new name now. My name is Opal Drew, and that is my new artist identity. I didn't want my artist identity to be named based on my last name anymore, which Hoops was based on my last name. And I don't want that to be a part of my, artistic identity any longer. So I have done a rebranding. My name is now Drew, and I'm actually going to be completely revamping my debut album as well. So the album that I released in 2020 called Down the River, I now view as my prototype, and so I'm gonna release my true debut album very, very soon. It's gonna be by the end of this year, and so I'm going to start ramping up promotion for it very soon. I'm gonna release singles, and so the first single will be released somewhere between September and October. So keep your eye out for that. My music channel is still linked. So yeah, check that out at your leisure. But I also am doing new covers as well, trying to make them better quality than I used to. I used to just do this sort of lo-fi cover vibe, but when I checked back on it, I was like, this is too lo-fi. This is like just straight up bad quality. So this time I'm trying to do kind of like a lo-fi, but like, good quality type of deal with the covers. Well, I'm going to do a mix of that, right? Like I'm going to do a mix of kind of covers while I'll be in sort of an informal setup like this. And I'm also going to try and do some sort of like cover music videos where I edit it to be a little more polished. And yeah, so I have so much on my mind, so much that I'm ready to show to the world, including with ASMR, music, and now science. And so yeah, so I'm very excited. I also have a new ASMR channel called the ASMR Geochemist, where I'll be doing some very, specific geology, chemistry videos with that scientific theme. Whereas I'm going to keep this channel to be sort of open thematically, with the focus mostly on the geography videos, because I really liked doing those, and those seemed to get some good positive attention. So that will probably be like the majority of what I do, but I'm also going to do more video game videos, rambles like this, as well as, whatever else. So I'm very excited. Thank you so much to anyone who has held on this long and, still is around. Just know that I see you and I hear you, and when you comment, like I take every comment very seriously. So I know it's been a few years, so I wasn't looking at the comments for a while, but now I'm getting back to fulfilling the requests that were given in this time.